Welcome to Show Studios Spring Summer 26 panel discussions. I'm Chani Ra, I'm your host today, and I want to let my beautiful panelists here introduce themselves. Do you want to start?
My name is Herbie Mensah.
I'm Isabelle Landicho.
My name is Kiki Agbor.
And what do you all do?
I design clothes using old, discarded, vintage, new, bring back life into old clothing, basically.
I'm a multidisciplinary creative from London via the Philippines. I work across creative direction, art direction, styling, and I also have my podcast, Eastern Honeys, and it's about elevating and uplifting East and Southeast Asian voices within the community.
I'm a brand consultant, a visual artist, and a creative, specifically on YouTube. I work with brands in the luxury industry and in fashion as well.
Okay, very legit. Today we're discussing Pitti Uomo's Guest of Honor Issey Miyake Homme Plissé. The collection is called Amid an Impasto of Horizons. Does anyone want to tell me what an impasto is?
Ooh, put me on the spot there. I Googled it last night.
I said it wasn't a pop quiz, but it is. An impasto is the process of layering paint in a very thick way. The the literal translation is like a dough. So that's like the main inspiration, or one of the main inspirations for this collection. We'll get into the rest. It's led by creative director Satoshi Kondo, and it was shown at the Villa Medici. Can I say this right? The Villa Medicea della Petrea. Sorry, any Italians watching if that was not good pronunciation. It was held in Florence. The site is closely linked to the Medici family, who were very active in the area from the 15th to the 18th century. They were rulers and bankers. So that's the context. I want to kind of set the tone for the panel and ask you all, what do you think makes a successful collection?
What I think makes a successful collection, I think it's so unhelpful to use this term, but the vibe. And I think the vibe is on point on this collection. Satoshi Kondo did an excellent job in research and development because, I mean, in the research pack, it said that they did like 13 trips to Italy. That is so evident within the looks within the collection. Like, I don't know if it's just me, but I think like I can see he's been inspired by like the grandmasters of Italian painting. So they say impasto, and it's quite evident in these, you know, the paint splattered, textured on the blazers. And also I think maybe they were inspired by food, Italian food culture, because like these pistachio hues and the lemon sorbet kind of like tones, it really is like so sumptuous and decadent. And I think that, you know, the immersion of Italian culture within the collection is so evident. So I would say it hits 100.
So you would say like a successful collection in your eyes is something that really has like a story, and you can see like what the designer was thinking, and it's like it translates well. I'm just asking like each of you, because I kind of think it's interesting to see like through what eyes we're judging, not judging, but you know. And what about you, Kiki?
I think there's a few things. Number one, it needs to be wearable. So people need to be able to, of course, wear the clothes and not just put them on, but it needs to actually function in their daily lives and fuse easily into their wardrobe. That's the most important thing, I think. And obviously the Issey Miyake brand are excellent at doing that. So I think that box has really been ticked. I think the second thing is that you need to really inspire and or have an aspiration in the clothes as well. So I think when people put the clothes on, they need to feel the story come through the clothing, and it should sort of spark your imagination and your brain to then think of how can you then take that story that's been given to you and sort of go about your daily life and find similar things or find new things as well. But I would say those are the two main things, and I think if you have those boxes ticked, then you pretty much have a successful collection. Okay,
let's see if it ticked the boxes. Isabelle kind of stole my line a little bit there. We're going to talk about research and development.
Sorry.
I'm joking. I was like, oh, you sound good. So Issey Miyake once describes the house as not a maison de couture, but a laboratory for development and production. As you said before, there was extensive development in this collection. There was multiple trips to Italy. I think it was 39 colours of Italy, so you were actually right about the foods. There was even a shade that was like the pizza dough beige. That was like
that's what I saw
impasto. I was saying, I've been decorating at home. I was like, no more swatches, please. I can't look at these. But I want to ask you first, Herbie. You work very intuitively in your own design, that we've spoken about this before. What do you think of this type of development stage?
I mean, I can resonate with that as well, because obviously it's a case of you're experimenting and he's putting things together. It's like an artist in the studio, as you say, with painting or whatever and that. But, you know, in how I work is you see a garment and you sort of like, you're basically experimenting and see how it will fit together. I mean, if you make a mistake, you start again. Or you can add on to that item, that garment, and create something. It's like an artist being in doing a painting, whatever. Rather than sort of like a couture house, you don't see it as making clothing. You see it as like an art form. Because Issey Miyake's clothes are like a walking, like a piece of sculpture, a piece of art that's moving when you actually wear it as well. So that's how I can resonate with him in my own sort of like line of work.
The wearer is so important, I think, in Issey Miyake.
Yeah.
I mean, it's important to any designer, but I think especially with Issey Miyake, it's like kind of the intention there is to see how it moves and flows.
Yeah, with obviously with the layers he puts on his clothing as well, and you can move sort of quite freely, and sort of like it's like a piece of art. You're working with a piece of art, especially with, like you said, with the paint splattered art garments as well, and the pleats, and it holds no bounds of sizes. It can be a plus size, can be whatever size, but it just fits perfectly on the body. You know, it's like hanging off you, draping off you.
And what did you
to
think?
add, I think it's definitely not couture, but it could be classed as demi-couture, I think. It just kind of has that middle ground, and I think when you're looking to invest in your wardrobe and acquire certain pieces, if you can have something that's, ready to wear, you're going to buy something and you're going to wear it, but I think when it's demi-couture, it makes it a little bit more special, and that's what it is to me.
I really like as well that he studied under Givenchy, and then he decided he wanted to make, or Issey Miyake decided he wanted fashion to be a bit more accessible, and I really like that about the brand, that it is, like you say, wearable art, and it is accessible, and he took that decision to kind of work outside of couture and into ready-to-wear, and I'm really glad he did, because it's stunning.
You look great, so.
Also, he stayed true to what he's been doing in the past. So nothing's changed as much, say, because of his, the pleats and everything, and the aspect of his designs and that. And you can add to it, when you buy something now, you can add to something that you've been bought back in time, and it still looks good.
That's a good point, actually, because in the collection they did introduce some like new ideas that we'll get to, but you're right, it could go with this outfit, it could go for something from like a collection 30 years ago.
Exactly,
It's all kind of like one long story. So we were talking a bit about the inspirations for the collection. Obviously, there's this impasto paint kind of starting point, and we did see a lot of workwear and like painter's gear references, and there were also these looks that I'm crazy about. Like I can't sleep anymore since I've seen these suits that are kind of inspired by the actual paintbrush, like packed with paint. I wanted to go to Kiki first for this one. Does it make you like a collection more when there's all of these kind of backstories to sink your teeth into? Because you do a lot of research in your work.
Yes and no. I think the story needs to, well, for me personally, I think the story needs to have some sort of link to current times. I think it needs to address something that we're dealing with in the current cultural zeitgeist. And I think if it does that, then it makes it more relevant, it makes it a little bit more powerful. So I think if that's done, then it does make it more compelling. I do think that sometimes you can over-reference and make it a little bit too stringent. I like when there's a little bit of room for your own interpretation and your own kind of idea of what you're looking at and of the collection itself.
Do you think some of it was too on the nose?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it was a little bit too stringent, and it was on the nose with the references. But overall, still a great collection.
Anybody else want to chime in?
Well, I don't know. I feel like he hasn't strayed too far from his true self. He's added colours, he's added a bit of boldness and that, but it's something for everybody. If you don't like it, don't buy it. Simple as that, But I do love this new collection. I mean, like I said, not all of it, but then again, like I say, he's stayed true to previous, collections and that, and just added a bit more colour, a bit more the paint splattering, and obviously, like I say, he's been to Italy, and he's basically done I'd say the landscape of the country with the industrial bit, with the coat hangers hanging off that's obviously the industrial bit, and obviously the colours of the pasta, the pista, whatever it is, and that, and the landscape of the country, and that, because obviously all the lush greenery and and they've just mixed it all in and put it all into the collection, I felt.
Can I actually just throw a random question that is not on the paper? Because obviously you're working as a stylist, and I know in your work you have done a lot of work for more workwear brands and practical Gorp vibe brands, outdoorsy. She has range, but she's done it. What did you think about the sort of workwear elements in this collection?
I think Satoshi Kondo tackled it really intelligently. Mm-hmm. And it is something that I haven't seen done before, in the sense that it is, so it's pleated, and that in itself is something I haven't seen within workwear. And so the garments, the pleats, please garments, they're actually cut and sewn, and then they're heat stamped to make the pleats. So I think construction-wise, that really makes me wonder how that process worked. Mm-hmm. And as a stylist, I think, I don't know, I love it. I like the whole collection.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because you've brought up something. So this season, they were trying to kind of mix the classic pleats with this more structured tailoring, and they had the signature 2-button jacket, but there was also some more silhouettes. There was a red coat, if you can find it, that was all pleated with these giant collars. Mm-hmm. So they were trying to sort of bring in different classic elements. What are your thoughts on Satoshi's response to classic menswear? Because you did kind of bring it up there, this contrast.
I think with the Issey Miyake brand, and especially Homme Plissé, it is obviously a menswear brand, but what I really love about it is this feminine, ethereal energy within the clothes, because it almost moves when you move. That in itself provides a sense of gender fluidity and this sense of just lightness of being. And yet it's workwear, but it's also wearable art, and I think it's just so gorgeous. Especially when you see it move, when you see it on the catwalk and you see it move, it's just stunning.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I do feel a bit funny calling it menswear, because I do think it is so fluid.
It's gender neutral.
I think so.
Yes, it is very, very, very much so. But it's something that red coat that we've just seen. I've got an old vintage coat, very, very, very similar to that same shape.
Is it for sale?
It's a lot of money.
I can't stop.
It's a lot of money. And it just made me think, my God, I've got that very, very similar silhouette shaped coat in my wardrobe. So like I say, it goes back to something he's done in the past, and he's brought it forward to now, and it just looks absolutely amazing.
I love that coat.
It's absolutely beautiful, yeah.
So I did skip ahead, and I was actually going to ask, I missed it out, where you guys kind of thought Issey Miyake was positioned within menswear. Do you have any?
Yeah, I think showing at Pitti is, of course, a strategic move for any brand, because you're trying to tap into a certain element of menswear. But when I look at this collection and I see kind of how it's presented in terms of the models, in terms of some of the constructions, I do think parts of it can be, I do think it's a little bit difficult, because, for example, if we look at a lot of the models, there isn't that much variation, I think, except for there's a model that's I think an older model, and then I think there's, and most of them do look quite young. So I think just from a communications aspect, I'm not sure how well that would sort of translate to the potential customer. That was one thing that stood out to me.
Well, I don't know. Obviously, there's some aspects of I wouldn't wear. I'm of a certain age, but there's a lot of it that I would wear. You know, the coats, the clothes, but obviously not the leggings.
Yeah, the leggings I didn't really. Some of it was quite. I felt quite infantile, but others were quite nice. Like for example, the model with the purple, I think it's a purple trench. Yeah, look 12. So this one, for example, this was my favorite look of the whole collection because you can see a lot of structure and the shapes are just a little bit more, a little bit stronger, you know. And I would have liked to see a little bit more of that structure throughout the collection. But yeah, that's my personal taste, anyways.
I could see that on you. There was actually those coats at the end. There was like a yellow one with the big hood, and I can't remember what season it was, but it wasn't that long ago. They did these really sculptural coats with those big hats in the same colour, and it's just, you were like, any references you want on the screen? No, actually, yes, there is. I just realised how similar the shape is, and that's kind of like a more pared down version. So I don't know where I'm going with that point, but if we're talking about referencing.
I see there in the Google search, the shoes. That was another thing that stood out to me as well. Is I think it was supposed to be a fuse between a chisel shape and then also a.
The chocolate loafers.
Yeah.
Love.
I believe that's a new silhouette that they're doing. I'm laughing because I know you hate it, Kiki. You just pulled up that look a minute ago. There was the purple look with the hangers left on. So there was this like transformational element that I found quite interesting. I liked the idea that these coats can turn into their own garment bags, which I do think is like has a sustainable element there. You're not having to bring in extra plastic or whatever. There was a question in here somewhere. Oh yeah, I wanted to hear Isabelle's thoughts on those looks from a stylist perspective.
They make this look in particular, look 36, really made me laugh.
Hang on.
Yeah. So from a stylist perspective, it comes with a hanger, amazing. And it's also packable, so I'm like, it would take up less space in my suitcase, returns would be really easy.
Do you think they needed to put a hanger on the jacket to illustrate that point?
I mean...
Obviously going to work, isn't he?
You can kind of see that he's holding the jacket, right?
Yeah. When he gets to work, he just takes off his jacket. He's got his ready-made hanger, takes it on the door.
I don't think the hanger is built in. I thought it was just the bag.
I don't think the hanger is built in. But I think, like, I really like the playful, tongue-in-cheek element of it. It's like fun and funny, and I really like it when fashion does that, you know, like with Loewe, like it's fun, it's funny, like it's cheeky.
It almost kind of reminded me of Moschino, and I'm just connecting the dots now. Like, was that intentional because they're in Italy? Was that like
maybe. Oh yeah.
That's what I go. Yeah, I mean, fashion is for fun. It should be for about fun, expressing yourself. You know, be happy, be like, you know, colours and brightness, and you know.
And actually, what I took from it was almost a play on the Japanese functionality, because the Japanese pride themselves on functional garments, you know, these very like technical uniforms in a sense. So I almost thought that was like a play on that. And like I said, it takes up less space in my suitcase, so it's fab.
I hadn't considered that, but that's so true. And I can't stop smiling now because all I can hear in my head is Kiki saying infantile. It did remind me of like the Pacamax you'd wear as a kid.
That's true. A rucksack turning into a jacket or something. Yeah.
And we're seeing so much like inner child play in collections, especially in New York. I would say more. But I like the idea of having these like elevated versions of things we had as children. Like, okay, back then it was the raincoat in the drawstring. Now you can have this like gorgeous coat in this kind of chic tote. I wanted to open the floor to you guys. It's a very dangerous risk, I know. Do you have any perspectives you want to share that we haven't covered? Any looks that you want to talk about?
I think, like, going back to narrative and storytelling, I believe, like, the greatest works of art and fashion are well-informed, and this collection is so well-informed, and you can see it in the details. And like the hues and the tones and the color palette. And I do, like you said, maybe it was on the nose, but I kind of like that.
Yeah, okay.
I kind of like it. It's just like, you see what you get, and you're like, I'm in Italy, I'm on holiday. But he also, like Satoshi Kondo makes it distinctly still Issey Miyake. And I really love that, you know.
I think he's doing a good job at carrying on the legacy. Anyone else want to?
I think the, so this was part of design, is it called Design Studio or Open? It's part of a concept where they're presenting different collections around the world in order to sort of expand and work outside of the typical fashion calendar, and try and connect with different cultures and different lifestyles. I think that's really, really interesting. I think fashion needs a lot more of that. You know, I think we're seeing more brands trying to break away from the rigidity of the fashion system by showing off calendar or by, you know, restricting phone usage, things like that. And I think designers who look to go to different countries and cultures, a lot like what Martine Rose does as well, and really just immerse yourself into it. I think that's an amazing way to communicate with people. So I'd love to see more of that.
One more thing I wanted to actually ask, because Satoshi Kondo is known for these like movement presentations. What did you think of the actual overall show? We're talking about the clothes, but we're ignoring this huge villa.
Yeah.
I wanted to know, because that is such a big part of what he does, like, we probably should talk about it, right? What do you think?
Well, I just find I mean, the setting was absolutely amazing, I thought. It just encapsulated all the collection with the colours, you know, the greenery, and obviously the clothes sort of flowed in that sort of walkway, and that sort of, it almost looks like a, you know, an artist's landscape with the paint splattered garments as well. And obviously with the layering of some of their garments, it just felt absolutely perfect.
I do think it's a testament to the collection that it wasn't overshadowed by this dramatic backdrop. Yeah. Like when I was watching the video, I felt like I was still watching the collection, not just being like, oh, there's a tree, there's a bird. So I do think, were there any questions?
Does this collection evolve or challenge Issey Miyake?
You know,
I look straight at Kiki.
I don't think it challenges.
No, not at all, no.
I wouldn't say it challenges, no. I don't think it's trying to do that either. I think it's really a collection that is strategic, really. It's there to communicate.
He stayed to his roots, and that, like I said, it really does harks back to past collections, where he's kept the essence of his designs and everything, and it's not changed. It's wearable, very, very wearable, and it's not at all. I think it's just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, not so much challenge, but I think he really just takes it like to his own, and it's really nice because it's like, what I think makes a good brand is like you know what you're getting in that brand, and with this collection, it does again what it says on the tin, but it's also like, I guess it is challenging, because it's how is it challenging?
Maybe it's challenging menswear in a way as well, with a lot of the silhouettes, I think. I was saying that, but I think it does lean a little bit more to the feminine side for a lot of the pieces. So I think in that sense,
with the tights and the leggings, I suppose that's where it's got, you know, you could say it's challenging in that sense.
This was a new chapter of Homme Plissé showing off schedule and in various locations around the world. Why do you think they've made this decision?
I just think the fashion cycle is completely unsustainable. And I think this is really, a lot of London designers are already doing it, like Ellis and Martine Rose, in a sense, they were showing out of season. And I think it's the way forward. Like, the fashion cycle is unsustainable, and we can't keep consuming and producing in the rate that we are because of environmental devastation. And also, like, who has the time and energy? Like, and I just don't think, like, to produce really great works of art, you need that time to, like, process, reflect, and, like, really create the art. So I think it's an exciting time for fashion, because it's like, I don't know, it's like, because now we're taking the time.
Did you want to add something? Because you were saying it's strategic, but like, what do you think the strategy is? I think that links into the question.
Yeah, I think the strategy is to, I think they want to communicate more with that kind of man who would typically wear those like sartorial suits, those quite structured forms. I think they're definitely communicating to that, to that man with this collection, and trying to have them consider something slightly different as well, because it's definitely different, especially for Pitti. Pitti's Pitti's all about that tailoring, and yes, there's a lot of tailoring here, but it's not that traditional tailoring. It's less kind of like, it's not as sharp, I think, in terms of the, maybe the shoulders. Yeah, exactly. Like the shoulders, the lapel, for example. You have a lot, you have a lot more draping here as well. So I think it's just trying to influence them to think a little bit differently.
You actually brought up quite an interesting point about, I think Isabelle started the point.
Yeah, I was piggybacking off of what you said, yeah.
About, you mentioned the London Fashion Week is a sort of a trailblazer for being off schedule and doing whatever the F you want, showing when you want, and taking time to produce these masterpieces. And then you started to say, I'll let you take it.
Yeah, I was just saying that someone mentioned like taking a breath and just, stopping for a second to consider what's actually happening. And that rarely ever happens in fashion.
Or
and
life.
I think, or in life, yeah, exactly, or in life. And I think London Fashion Week being cancelled was kind of was a wake-up call in a sense, and it was quite kind of symbolic, to look and see like what is actually happening, what is going on, why are people showing, why are people presenting? Do you need to present? Do you need to have a runway show?
I think it's important to have a runway show, because obviously there's a lot of designers out there. How else are they going to sort of show their collections as well? And obviously having it sort of off kilter, I just think it's just an amazing idea. As you said, Martine Rose showed just a couple of weeks ago, didn't she? And that wasn't. And I was just thinking, is this London Fashion Week again already? It wasn't, but the buzz around that was just immense. And I just felt like good for her. London Fashion Week can be sort of like one show. But if you do it one show off kilter, you've got all the attention for that one show for you.
Yeah.
And you create that buzz. So, more for it, I'd say, personally, yeah.
So you think, you don't do shows, do you?
No, I don't do shows.
Herbie's telling me he thinks it's very important to do shows, because I've asked you this before.
Obviously with my label, because everything's literally, because I'm Herbie Mensah London, by the way. Yeah. And obviously mine's a sustainable fashion brand, and everything basically one-off and that. But I would love to do a show, but obviously the impact of it is everything's all one-off, and I feel like I don't need. Do I need to do a show? Yes and no. But with the bigger brands or brands that are up and coming who can afford to do a show, I think it's important, and that.
It's brand building.
Yeah, it's brand building. This is it, exactly. Yes, yeah. So maybe I do need to do a show.
I think you do. You don't. You're doing your thing. But I also do think, when you mentioned bigger brands doing it, I do think it sets an example. Yeah. We see a lot of like younger brands kind of coming off schedule out of necessity more than want. It's that they actually can't afford to do shows. But I think when you see people sort of at the top of the chain, as it were, doing that, it kind of makes it okay and makes it less pressure. Because I do just think a lot of younger designers feel the pressure to have a show, and to have to show on this week, and to have to show on this day and at this location. So I think it's kind of a responsible thing.
And there's too many. It's far too many, my goodness, God,
So maybe you shouldn't do one. Add one to the mix. There is a quote, actually, that's kind of like the underpinning for the whole Issey Miyake world, which is, can I see it? I've lost the quote. Oh, design is not for philosophy, it's for life. And in this conversation, it's kind of like, we see that translated into the clothes, but now we're seeing it translated into how we show the clothes and fitting into their own personal schedules. So I guess that's something to note as well.
I think it's a really interesting time in the industry, and I wonder where this will go, because is this going to be the end of big fashion cycles as we know it? Is it the move towards completely just brands showing whenever they want? And it's refreshing and exciting, and there are no rules right now, I don't think.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens next.
I think when a brand that you are particularly fond of is showing off schedule, you're more inclined to take your time out to go watch that show, rather than it being like compiled with a bunch of other brands. And
That's true. This is it, exactly. I know.
So that separation could be good, and even, you know, not to bring up Martine Rose again, but even the saloon style that she did, you know, it wasn't just like a runway. It was like you're in a saloon, very, very Margiela-esque in a way.
Yeah.
You know, it made it a little bit more humanistic, and
it was at an old job centre.
Yeah.
Some great, I know because I was there. Yeah.
So this element of that humanistic nature is what is really needed in fashion, especially in this world of like AI and like robots and computers and stuff like that. People want to feel human, you know. So I think collections like with what she did, and also with the idea of, I'm not sure what the name is, where they are trying to go around to different Issey Miyake, Homme Plissé are trying to go to different countries and something open studio. I think I should have done my research.
Brings it to a whole new audience as well, I suppose, as well.
Yeah.
And that's showing you different parts of the world or wherever, and that, you know what I mean? So it's great. It's like just bringing the brand out to a whole new audience and keeping it out there.
Yeah.
I think I suppose with Issey Miyake, I think he needs to keep it out there because he's got a long history of, especially with this label.
Yeah, when you fuse that history with like going to the Italian countryside, and you get something, you can get anything really. That's what you got. Yeah.
Do you keep using the word humanistic? Do you feel like this was humanistic? We keep veering off to Martine, who is very human-centered, people-centered. Do you see that reflected here?
I think so. Yeah, I think it is quite humanistic. It's workwear, and you know it's workwear built around kind of like the idea of painters. You know, and I don't know a lot of painters personally, but there are painters out there. So in that sense, yeah, it's definitely humanistic. You know, you're talking about a specific person in a specific job, and that's really important. If you're making clothes, you know, who are you talking to?
But they're not going to wear that to actually work. And actually, this is the topic, because we're seeing a lot of chatter online now about sort of like people just dressing to look like they think a certain way and to look like they do a certain thing. Do you think maybe walking around covered in paintbrushes is trying to present yourself as a creative rather than maybe being one?
That's a good question for you. You're a stylist.
Maybe.
That's a great question.
Put me on the spot.
I was not on the...
If you're working from home, I suppose, exactly. Yeah, in front of the computer. Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, fashion is self-expression. So like if it makes you feel a certain way and if it gives you power and confidence, then why not dress the part? And I think essentially like, yeah, I mean, that's why I love fashion. Like I love, you know, being like growing up in an Asian household, like I just didn't get to express myself in the ways that I knew, and fashion was the way that I did that. And that's why I love it so much. So if it makes you happy, why not?
I'm curious how the paintbrush pockets actually, I'm curious how effective they are, you know, in terms of holding things. Like, because you've got the paintbrushes in there, but if I put I don't know, keys or whatever in there, will it, I'm curious to know how it'll function.
It reminded me of where you actually interned, Isabelle. I know my guests. Nassim Azar's bully cap with the pencil.
Oh, yeah.
It's not really a functional... Well, it's functional because it's a paintbrush, but it doesn't need to serve another purpose. It's just to hold all your brushes because you're such a busy painter. The same way with the bully cap, it was like, oh, these are for all my ideas, or it was kind of a riff on like builders use them, which I did not know. I learned it through fashion before I learned it through whatever building is. But I don't think it's meant to serve another purpose. I think it is a design element. I do believe on some of the trousers there's like a functional pocket next to them. I think, in my head there is. But I can't imagine maybe a cigarette you could put in there within a paintbrush.
Is it big enough for a mobile phone?
No.
I have a question. How do you feel like Homme Plissé kind of fits in with the universe that Issey Miyake has created?
Well, obviously the collection is very gender neutral, I'd say. And I don't think you can define if a man's going to wear it or a woman's going to wear it, because it all very much molds into one. You know, because a lot of these garments, I mean, a lot of women these days are wearing men's jackets and men's clothes and men's trousers and stuff. So I just feel it's, in the universe, it basically just molds all into one. So basically everything is all for everybody.
But now you bring up all the different offshoots, like the Please, Homme Plissé, Epoch. Do you think it's actually intentional? Because if it was intended to be that way, do you think there's a purpose of having like a Homme Plissé?
I think, honestly, I think it's Issey Miyake is such a great brand because, I know what it's about, I know what I'm getting, and I think his brand codes and storytelling is just so on point. Because even with the fragrance, I saw on the bottle of the fragrance, it's ridged in a pleat almost at the top, and I'm like, that's so smart. And you can see Issey Miyake, his logo as well, the triangles, and he has those triangle bags. It's so encompassing. And if Issey Miyake was a multiverse, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Everything makes sense.
Do you think, as recognizable as Issey Miyake is, do you think if you saw somebody on the street in one of these looks, you'd instantly be like, oh, Homme Plissé? Or do you just sort of generally say, oh, Issey Miyake? Do you think they kind of have their own strong identities, or do you think they kind of blend into one, Issey sphere?
I think it blends into one, yeah.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, I'd say, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think nowadays subdivisions are more a commercial move than anything, really, and about communicating to a specific audience. I think Comme des Garçons do the same thing as well with their different offshoots. Mm-hmm. So it just allows you to focus a little bit more on a certain customer, and I think that's what they're looking to do here. Yeah. I think I would like to see it develop into something a little bit more kind of intentional for that customer, for that menswear customer.
In a way, now we talk about it, I wouldn't, because I think business is so boring and fashion is so interesting, and I always have this vision in my head of all of the suits being you need to do another division, you need to target men, and they're like, okay, and then within that just doing whatever they want. Kind of the rebellious nature of them all being the same.
I mean, it goes back to what we were saying about the fashion life cycle. It's a lot of brands, you have a menswear season and you have a women's wear season, but you're still showing menswear, women's wear in both.
Exactly.
Anyway.
It makes it so confusing, yeah.
Well, but it's as you were saying, I think now designers know that we're going to wear each other's clothes regardless, so you may as well give an example. Well, it's been fabulous speaking to you all. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to Show Studio on YouTube. See you next time.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.